Hi there, and welcome to this presentation from Concept to Build Reality, as it was hosted at the BuildingpointSA Roadshow in Centurion at the beginning of December 2025. I presented alongside the Trimble team, Marines Duplessis from Parametric Group and Daryl Epstein from DeltaScan. Between ourselves and the Trimble team, we presented a workflow that demonstrated the capability of the Trimble ecosystem, both the hardware and the software. So there were various scanners for surveyors available, both tripod laser-based scanners and total stations and SLAM-based handheld scanners. All of them demonstrated their own capability, but overall the demonstration covered the specific conference venue that we were hosted at and the survey that had been completed a week before the actual conference demonstrated the registering, the recording of the as-built environment, followed by a dramatization of how fast a project could be generated for a contractor to work off to extend the existing conference building. So the scanning technology presented or provided us with a Gaussian splat and a point cloud that was uploaded to Trimble Connect. The architect, the building engineer, and the structural engineer could all take that point cloud and that Revit/SketchUp file to import that into their various software formats. They could then calculate the strength required to support the structure using Tekla. They could demonstrate to the client using SketchUp the look and feel and the positioning of the additional space. And then using Trimble Project Site, one could present a set of drawings to the contractor and keep them up to date with any variations or further detailing. So once this general presentation was completed, a few of us, as I mentioned, Daryl Epstein and Marines Duplessis, were invited to present our workflows that we adhere to or that we use in our respective business environments. So for myself, in my design studio, we use SketchUp and layout extensively. For Daryl Epstein, it was presenting a lot of the scanning technology that they use in forensic environments. And for Marines Duplessis, it was showcasing their API-enabled workflows within the Tekla construction software with his company Parametric. So I wanted to take some time to show you an abbreviated version of my presentation, of my demonstration, so that for those that weren't there or couldn't be there, they have an idea of what was presented. And for those that are interested in the topics that we were discussing, you can use this summary to your own liking. All right, without further ado, here we go. I demonstrated within my presentation, and this is something that I wanted to ask you, the viewer, as well. I demonstrated what was it like as a young boy, as a young person growing up, and recognizing within yourself the passion that you have for building, for the building industry. What got you started? And for me, growing up in the Netherlands, it was building sandcastles along the beach. It was things like building little skill models such as Villa Rotunda in high school. It was the digitization of some of the drawing tools that we had through the technology of AutoCAD. And it was my experience with the digital virtual reality of LiDAR scanning, SLAM scanning, point clouds, etc. And so all those technologies and all those interests led me to pursue the career that I have now. So our design studio, Studio JDB, focuses a lot on spatial design. And in sort of order of importance, we tend to focus a lot on retail, exhibition, event, interior, and public artwork. So we operate in sort of a conceptual design discipline, and we tend to cross the boundaries between the traditional disciplines of architecture, landscape, and interior design. Now, our studio tends to operate using quite a lot of tools, and so not all of those tools are something maybe you are perhaps familiar with. And I just wanted to exemplify the kind of tools that we like to use. So here you see a quick overview of what are the most used tools in the environment that we operate in. From Google Workspace and ClickUp for project management to simply taking notes using a Moleskine with a blackening pencil, using our favorite Stanley measuring tape on site to measure something by hand, documenting some of our site visits with audio and video using an Insta360 camera, and doing some low quality, ease of use LiDAR scans using an iPad Pro. There's a whole range of apps, right, that comes with this. So Magic Plan, 3D Scanner app, and Polygon are quite a few of our fan favorites. Then in our digitization tools that we use, SketchUp and Layout, obviously, as our preferred tools, we also tend to use the Affinity Suite, Designer, Photo, and Publisher, which have now all been combined into one Affinity app recently. The other tools that we use are D5 Render and DaVinci Resolve for final editing of animation and video content. Last but not least, when we use some AI tools, we tend to use OpenAI, Cortex, Eden, these kind of easy visual assemblies for AI tools. And with that said, we, I wouldn't say dislike Pinterest, but we like any opportunity to reach back to a physical book. And so if we can, we will. And as you can see behind me, there is a whole range of books, both visually sort of page through coffee style table books and more intricate detailed architectural plan books. Our workflow tends to go from paper-based to digital, and then in digital starting with SketchUp primarily. Then that SketchUp model transition to the layout space. The layout space gets set up into a set of documentation, a documentation that might get further amplified and detailed using the Affinity tool set. And then we end up with a set of construction drawings. Those construction drawings using layout can be anything from a schematic drawing to a construction detail drawing or even a council specific drawing. And we don't use AutoCAD or Revit for that. We do everything in-house in layout. And if we need to, we might ask any other person to send us that CAD file so that we can make it relevant to our layout environment. But thus far, it's been a good workflow for any of the stakeholders involved. Now, specifically zooming in on the SketchUp aspect, if I go back to that front segment of our workflow, SketchUp can operate very much as a Swiss pocket knife, right? Or if you're more familiar with a Leatherman, it can operate in that way. And what I mean by this is to say the primary function of the tool is to draw something in 3D. The primary function of a Leatherman is to use the pliers. The Swiss pocket knife is to use the knife. But both of those handheld tools, those multi-tools, come with a set of other tools, right? They might not be their primary function, but certainly their secondary function doesn't go amiss when you find yourself in a pinch. And so SketchUp, by its very nature, is extremely strong in conceptual modeling, and maybe less so when it comes to creating documentation. And that's, of course, then why we use layout to fulfill the need for that documentation. However, moving from a very conceptually orientated drawing to a technical drawing sometimes needs a little bit of fine-tuning, whether it's fine-tuning of the way that you've drawn something or the way that you've created hierarchy within your drawing, that varies. But all in all, there are different kinds of plugins that you can install within SketchUp. And this is maybe one of the most powerful features within the tool. Is the philosophy of SketchUp is that the tool is open enough for other people to use the API and various Ruby developed scripts and apps to develop these extensions, as SketchUp calls it. And so each of these, either for free or for a small cost as an annual or perpetual license, can be purchased and then added onto your tool set So basically bulking up or amplifying your Swiss pocket knife. And to the extent that some of these plugins, I must say, almost become primary functions alongside SketchUp. So basically saying it is as good as a knife as it is a file or a pair of scissors. And that makes SketchUp really powerful to have a forum and a community of developers who keenly develop new tools that further automate and make efficient the SketchUp tool for what it is. Now, if you see that in action within our environment, we might go to a store like a Puma store. As an example, we might use the 360 camera, as you can see on the left-hand side, to do a survey. We upload those photos to the cloud so that anyone in our team or anyone on the stakeholder side from the client can see those various store environments. We will use a quick LiDAR scan using an iPad or a Metapore to create a 3D environment of the existing store. And then we create the digital twin, which in this case is showcasing some of the window dressing. From that window dressing, we move on to production files for DTP setup, printing, manufacturing of corrugated boards, MDF or plywood plinths, or different configurations for a lighting specialist to set up the pendants hanging from the ceiling. And so all in all, this set of documents acts as a single source of truth. It acts as a single working file for all the 26 stores of Puma in South Africa. And having documented the stores in this manner, it becomes much easier for a client like Puma to change over their campaigns, whether seasonal or product orientated, once every 8 weeks. And so the last thing that you can see is an example of one of those campaigns in action between the hanging boards, the finals applied to the window, the backlit panel in the background, and the plinth with the shoe display. So this philosophy of how we draw over the years has been fine-tuned bit by bit. And if you allow me to 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 harp on a bit about the passion or the preference that someone might have about their philosophy behind architecture and design, then I would like to describe some of our design thinking and our processes as following. And that is within our workflow, we are very privileged as designers, as architects, as engineers to work with software that we hopefully really enjoy working in, right? You hopefully really enjoy working in SketchUp, Revit, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, whatever it is that you use. And so for us to be natively so accustomed to using the softwares, if we demonstrate any of the things that we've drawn in the software, or if we create output like a 2D set of drawings, and we hand that to our client, not every of our clients is completely familiar with the tools that we have, right? And the user interface that we find so normal in our day-to-day workflow. And so what we've tried to do over the years is to try and develop a method to try and develop a workflow and a visual style that gives the client some form of an anchor point. And many architects will say, well, look, if I've got a moleskin and a pencil, I will sit with my client and I will draw out a very specific design, hand sketched, right? And because I'm having that coffee, because I'm having that cup of tea with my client around the dining room table or a cafe, wherever you find yourself, that one-on-one interaction is sufficient for me to anchor the conversation with the client and for them to consider the direction that we're going in. And I think that that's true. I think that people meeting in person and using a tool such as a sketchbook is a really wonderful way of demonstrating to a client that you understand what they are asking you to do and also to share your vision. Now, beyond that, if we do not discontinue to use the sketchbook, but if we amplify that with our current digital and virtual tools, then we can take that Insta360 camera, we can take that LiDAR scanner, and we can create these digital twins, these Gaussian splats, these amplified virtual environments. And we can place our copy of the physical world in photographic form around our digital model. So we can basically create a virtual model in a virtual represented physical space. And in the ways that we have done that in the past is if you think back to skill model making, right? The skill models, in a sense, presented our virtual idea, our abstract idea, in the real world in the form of a little skill model, in the form of a maquette. And one thing that we realized over the course of our career was this little video game called Hitman Go. If you search for it online, you'll find a few back behind the scenes background information videos. And in those videos, the makers of the video game explain that they really like the idea of board games together with skill models as a visual style. And so the visual style of the Hitman Go game that you can play on a mobile device appears as the form of a skill model. And so you, as the Hitman, the main character, navigate the environment as if you were standing on a board game, and some parts of the environment that you're in are extremely simplified, and some parts are highly detailed. And so if you can anchor your client's mind in a virtual reality and anchor them by using physical assets back into the physical space, then you've got this wonderful hybrid between physical and digital. And so what we then tend to do in our SketchUp environment is to utilize some of these physical elements. So for example, if we digitize a cutting mat that you would normally use to build your skill models with, if we digitize that cutting mat, it gives the client a little bit of grounding to consider that even though that we're working in the virtual space, even that we've drawn out all these bottles that you can see on the stand, and these cupboard spaces that you see on the right-hand side, we've created an environment, right, in which all of this can exist. And so that tends to be the technique in which we do this. And here you can see another example of the development of that store with behind it and on either side the various concepts, the various ideas that we had. And by grounding it on this sort of ground plane of this mall environment, it feels like we're in the physical space, even though this is our virtual representation. So coming to a close on that design philosophy, I just want to reiterate, whether we are working in SketchUp and layout, we can create schematic construction and council orientated drawings using that 3D model that we have in SketchUp. So now as an example, and I'm not going to go into the SketchUp model or into the layout file within this digital recording. If you want me to do that, please contact me on LinkedIn. Please contact me via email on our website, and I'll happily demonstrate to you this workflow in detail for one of your projects. But here's an example of a Lego project, a store within a store. So we create a concept in SketchUp Pro. It gives us fast iterations, and it allows us to show the steps of structure and detailing from SketchUp to layout. And basically what we've generated over that time is documentation that, and without going into much detail, documentation that you can see goes right from the agency name, Jawbone in this case, supporting Lego, right through to the floor plan of the store, the environment that this was hosted in, to the aisle where the shopping takes place, and then the structure that Lego created that sits over the existing shopping aisle. And so the structure in aluminium takes shape. We see some kick plates, we see some foam board cladding, we move over to some custom shelving, some light boxes, some detailing, and some graphics. Then if we zoom in on the SketchUp model on the specific page, we take a look at the magnifying glass, at a little highlight of products. And then we break down the structure. So we break down the aluminium structure in detail. We show each piece of artwork, its sizes, its quantity, so the printer can print things accordingly. We show how many foam boards are being used, and we label where each is positioned. We describe each piece of artwork in detail. And basically what we're doing is we're breaking down the standardized architectural drawing, and almost like Lego, we are building a digital assembly guide. We're building an assembly guide similar to how you would receive a assembly guide for Lego. We are creating an assembly guide for a retail installation. And so we transition to a detail of how to build a Lego block. We take a look at some of the logo light boxes, the steel bending for the kick plates, all the way down to us finishing off with the documentation for the LEDs and lighting legend, and a bill of quantity for where everything is stored in various warehouses. So that, in short, was the workflow that we adhere to by creating a SketchUp model, a single SketchUp model, a single source of truth, and then by breaking that SketchUp model down over these various pages to show a step-by-step guide of how all of this comes together. If you want to get in touch with us, please reach out to us on LinkedIn or Instagram. You can find on Zoom some 3D photographic render environments that we've created in the past. And bit by bit, I hope you have enjoyed seeing the SketchUp workflow in the way that it is used in layout. And I hope that in the future you have maybe some more questions about how to implement a workflow like this. If you want to use SketchUp in your design business or in your manufacturing business, alongside some other digital tools that you have, and you want to see how best to integrate it, feel free to reach out. If you want to switch from a specific design software to a SketchUp design environment, and you want us to help you work out that transition over a certain period of time with your team, we would be very glad to help. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great week and wish you the best end of year festive season.